Alright, so in this app, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on from our last application where we just did a basic introduction into tables. And now we're going to extend and expand upon it and create customized cells for a customized look and feel for this table view that we're going to add in today. We're also going to add in event handling. So learning how to click on a cell and then have it do something there at the same time. So let's look at the demo here. We click on Begin. When we click on Begin, we see our characters from Monkey Kiss and Donkey 2 from projectmkd.com. I can see the game on the side. Click on Donkey, and it goes to a website here. And you see Donkey's abilities off the website for the app there. And so you hit back. We'll click on Walla, and then it'll load up my personal favorite is Walla, the character. And so it'll load up Walla's abilities and strengths. And we'll scroll down. We'll see all about what Walla is. And from there, hit back again, and we're back at our home page. So that is the application we're going to build today. So what we'll do is we'll start off with a fresh project. So we'll do File, New Project, iOS, Single View App. We'll call this application Swift Tables 2. And we'll hit Next and give it a home. Alright, so now that we have our basic app project ready to go, what we're going to do is we're going to organize our files into groups, just because we're going to have some extra files to deal with here. So our first group will be view controllers. Then we'll add another group. We'll call this group classes. And then we'll add another group. We'll call this group storyboards. And add another group for images. Today we're going to use the assets file though for the images. But in the meantime, we're going to drag our files over. So app delegate goes to classes, view controller goes to view controllers, main storyboard goes to storyboards, and launch screen goes to storyboards as well, and assets goes to images. And we're going to use the assets file today, like I said a moment ago. It'll be a different approach to dealing with images rather than typing in the hard-coded name into the images. And so you're going to find that the assets file is a very easy file to work with. And you can provide all kinds of images, such as the app icon. So all of your app icons could be here for different sizes for the app icon for different models. You can do launch screen as well. So you can have your launch screen files in here as well. But we're going to use it to bring in our basic images for the Monkey Kiss and Donkey 2 characters. So what we need to do in order to get our images to display is to bring over Finder and navigate to where our images are in Finder. And so you can see here we have all 8 characters from Monkey Kiss and Donkey 2 as PNGs. See, there's Donkey, there's Hita, Llama, and all the characters are there. So we'll just do a Command A to select all, and all you have to do is just drag it onto the assets file, and it automatically creates entries for all of the images you drag over. So I don't need my Finder anymore. And the best part is it actually copies these files directly into the project, so you don't have to worry about that whole copy items if needed bit. So we can go ahead and start using these images as is, and you can see their names are listed out there, and we're omitting the file extensions there. So we have Ion, Donkey, Hita, Llama, Monkey, Walla, Yina, and Yoti. We can just simply use those images as is with those names without having to worry about the file extension. So our images are now in there, ready to go. We're going to right click, say new file. Because we have a 3-page app, we're going to add 2 more view controllers. So iOS, Cocoa Touch class, so subclass of UI view controller. We're going to call this second view controller choose site view controller. And we'll hit next and give it a home. So it'll be the view controller we will actually choose the website to navigate to. So there's choose site view controller. Then we're going to right click, on view controllers the folder again and say new file. It'll say iOS Cocoa Touch class, hit next, and it'll also be subclass of UI view controller. We'll call this one view site view controller. And so this file, its purpose will be to view the website. So we'll hit next, give it a home. So we've got all of our view controllers in play, and all we need to do now is arrange our storyboard so that we can have all the items we need on there. So we'll start with launch screen. And with launch screen, what we'll do is we'll drag over a label. And so the label will just say the word loading. So we'll center that. Type in loading. Centered. But let's add some images just to add some flair. So drag over an image view, and we'll put monkey up for this image view. So I'm just going to scroll down. You see monkey is there without the file extension, and so there's a picture of monkey in his victory pose. But since we're at it, let's add the other 7 characters on just to really dress up this screen here. So actually I'll just copy and paste. So I'm going to paste 7 monkeys. He's on the screen, by the way. Just drag them to different parts of the screen just for fun. But we'll change each of the monkeys to the other characters so we can actually see them. And so we'll change this one to donkey. We'll change this one to llama. This one will be Yoti. This one Yina. This one Walla. This one Hita. And finally Ion. And there we go. So we have all of our characters there on the home page, ready to work with. And so now, let's switch over to main.storyboard and build out the storyboard for our application. We're going to be using portrait mode this time around for our application, as you saw in the demo. So let's start off with dragging a label, and we'll put our title in for the home page, and we'll say mkd to characters, a character chooser for the title label on the home page. And then let's drag over a button. That button, we'll stretch it out a little bit, and it'll have the word begin. So now that we've got our label and our button for the home page, now what we want to do is drag over the other view controllers for the page. Let's drag over a view controller for page 2. All right, and we'll drag over a view controller for page 3. All right, so we've got our 3 pages there. Now we have here choose site view controller.swift and view site view controller.swift. We need to map these Swift files to its corresponding view controllers on the storyboard. So we'll start off in the identity inspector, click on the yellow circle for the second page, and then start typing in the word choose, and it'll autocomplete to choose site view controller. Hit tab to tab away. We'll go for the page 3, and you'll see we have view site view controller. Hit tab, and it'll automatically autocomplete for that. And so now we have here choose site view controller and view site view controller. We have all 3 pages. So let's create a segue from the begin button to choose site view controller. So we can click on the begin button, and it'll navigate over to choose site view controller for us automatically, and we'll choose present modally for that as well. Now creating a segue for page 2 to page 3, that is from choose site view controller to view site view controller, will be a bit tricky because we're not going to be using your conventional IB actions or buttons in the table view to go to the third page. So we'll have to choose a different approach to getting the segue to happen. And so what we'll use is our little document view. So there's a little icon in the bottom corner, bottom left corner, that we're going to click on. And you've seen it pop in and pop out automatically over the past few videos, and even for this video as well. It's the document view. And so it gives you a tree-like look to all of your objects on the storyboard. Now what we're going to do is we're going to navigate. We created a segue already that goes from view controller to choose side view controller. But what we need to do is create a segue to go from choose side view controller to view side view controller. And so what we'll do is we'll click on choose side view controller. And we'll do the same thing we did for the begin button. Hold down the control key on the keyboard, click and drag to view side view controller. Let go, and same thing as before, present modally. So there. We've now created a segue to go from choose side view controller to view side view controller. We have to do one additional step, because we're going to call this segue in code. That's the only way to get it to work. So we have to click on the little segue arrow that was generated in the storyboard and let it turn blue. And then once it turns blue, then we can give it an identifier. So we click on it, turns blue, go to our attributes inspector, and you see a little item called identifier there. Well, if we click on that, we'll give it an identifier. It'll be choose segue to view, to try and illustrate what the segue is all about. All right, and this identifier is important because we're going to use it in code. Basically, invoke the segue. All right, so we've given a label to our second segue. Now let's finish putting stuff on the screen. So I'm going to hide away my document outline and focus on these screens. So both screens are going to have navigation bars. So I'm going to put a navigation bar up here. Put choose character this time. Put a navigation bar up here. Put view character. And both will need back buttons. So I'm going to look for a bar button item. And put the bar button item in each of them. And just change the word item to back. Alright, so I've got choose character, I've got view character. The choose character screen is going to have a table view. So type in the word table. You got table view controller, table view, and table cell. So again, I'm not going to do the table view controller. I'm going to do the UI view controller, which I've done already. The only reason I'm doing that is because I can illustrate to you the intricate connections and how table views work on their own, so that you can apply them anywhere and not be dependent on a table view controller. Now from here on in, you can take a table view controller, easily just drag and drop into your project, and all the work is done for you. So, but this exercise is to show, like, maybe you want to have a page that's half map, half table view, which we do in a future lesson. So that's why we use the regular view controller. So I'm going to drag a table view, populate the rest of the screen with this table view. Alright, so I got table view. Now, I'm going to also finish off the third page. The third page is going to have a web view, or actually a WebKit view. So type in web. I want WebKit view. I'm going to drag that over, expand it all the way. And put an activity indicator in the center. And change it to large white, so it's a little more visible for us. Choose red for the color. So we've got our activity indicator. We're not going to connect anything up for the third page, but we can connect stuff up for the second page, but we'll do that in a moment once we're done. So let's focus on coding up this middle page and getting the Unwind Segue done for the back button for this second page. Now, we've been doing apps that have not had a third level. And this is our first time having a third sub page, so a third level down. So creating an unwind segue is a bit tricky here. So first thing we'll do is we'll go to viewcontroller.swift and we'll create our unwind segue. This unwind segue is going to represent going back to the home page. So we'll say IB action func unwind to home view controller sender UI storyboard segue. Right, and it'll be empty. Right, but remember, anyone that links to this segue will go to directly the home page, right? Because it's located inside viewcontroller.swift. Right, but this is what we need for now. This is all we're going to do inside viewcontroller.swift. Now what we're going to do is focus our energy on choose side view controller. So we'll go to choose side view controller, and we'll start off by bringing in our unwind segue here, because we're going to have a third page, and so we want that third page to return back to the second page. To do that, we have to put an unwind segue in this view controller, because this is our second page. So we're going to say IB action again, func unwind to, call it choose view controller. Sender is UI storyboard segue. Alright, so now we have our unwind segues out of the way. We'll take care of that later in terms of connecting them, but let's get the table code up and running. And to do that, we need some data. Our data, again, for this app, we're going to hard code the data, but we're going to have 3 items to hard code. So 3 arrays. Last time we just had the 1 array with just the name of the characters. This time we're going to have 3 arrays, 1 with the character names, 1 with the websites, and 1 with the avatar images. So we need 3 arrays. Before we begin with the arrays, we need to bring in our 2 delegates to support the table. So we're saying class choose side view controller extends UI view controller, comma UI table view data source, and UI table view delegate. Causes an error. It's saying, hey, you're missing the support methods needed for this view controller. You could click the red and yellow circle to get them to auto-generate the methods for you. I'm not. I'm going to talk you through the methods again, just like last time, so that you can get an understanding of what those methods are for. So first, let's create our arrays. So first, we're going to say var list data. This will be for the name of our characters. And so open an array. Let's say monkey, donkey, llama, yoti, yina, walla, hita, and ion. So those are the 8 characters that we're going to have, which means there'll be 8 cells in our table. Now the second one is all of our URLs. So all of the websites all are on projectmkd.com. So I could simplify this down, but I chose to write it out the long way. And I did it on purpose just so that I can illustrate to you, just in case if you have like different websites that you wanted to incorporate. So I'll just do it one at a time. So var site data equals, I will say http://www.projectmkd.com/monkey. And I think it's just easier to copy and paste, so I'll just do that. So second one will be donkey, comma, paste again. This will be llama, and then paste again, yoti, paste again, yina, Paste again. Voila. Paste again. Hita. And finally, ion. So those are all of the URLs that I have for the characters, all 8 characters. And you have to be careful because, well, 2 things. First, I'm using a non-secure URL. So I need to open a security hole, which I'll illustrate to you in a moment, for non-HTTPS websites. And the other thing is the spelling. If anything's misspelled here, then when you go and you run it, you try and view your website, it'll just keep the activity indicator will just keep spinning forever. So you won't get any result. You'll just be sitting there wondering what's going on. So now the next thing you want to do is have an array for your images. So what we'll do is we'll say var, call it image data, equals, and here's the fun part. If I just start typing in monkey, hit enter, there it is, monkey, comma, donkey. But if I hit comma right away, it doesn't autocomplete. I love to see the avatars there, so I'll type in donkey again, autocomplete, and then llama. Now, unfortunately, I misspelled llama in the file name, but I didn't fix it, so that's why I have the shorter spelling there. But the correct spelling is L-A-A-M-A-A, just like code llama as well. Yoti, Yina, Walla, Hita, Ion. So all of my characters there, and you get to see the images directly in code, which is a fun thing to see. So now, what we want to do is we want to configure the table so that we can see the data in the table. So we've got our data, we've got list data, site data, image data, we've got our Unwind Segue. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into creating the table methods we need to support the table and get it to display. So I'll put it right below image data. We'll start with the first method. The first method is how many table cells are there going to be in this table. So that method is called number of rows in section. I'm just going to return the length of the array. Pick one of the arrays. So of course there's different ways I could have done this. I could have had like one array with objects inside of it, create a custom class with the different objects, but it chose to have 3 different arrays for simplicity. So I'm going to return list data dot count. So length of one of the arrays. Then the second method I'm going to choose is how thick is each cell going to be. I'm going to hard code it to 60 pixels. I'm just going to display it on an iPhone. Of course, if it was an iPad as well, you may want to use that user interface idiom call and check to see if it's iPad versus iPhone and just readjust the thicknesses of the cells. So I'm going to say height for row at return 60. Alright, so I got number of rows in section, height for row at, so 2 methods right there. Now the third method I need is what does each cell look like? So it's called cell for row at. And unlike the first 2 methods, this method is called all the time. So it's called over and over again. It's called in 2 scenarios. One is that it's called when it's a brand new table being displayed on the screen and you're instantiating table cells. And the other scenario is when you swiped on your table and a cell is leaving the screen and needs to be repopulated with new data and repurposed and then put back on the screen. So we're going to check to see which scenario is going on. We're going to assume the second scenario of a cell is leaving the screen by saying let table cell equal table view dot dq reusable cell with identifier. Just put in cell. And if this happens to be nil, we'll take full advantage of Swift's double question mark operator by saying if whatever is on the left-hand side is nil, we'll do what's on the right-hand side, which is instantiate a UITableViewCell. Now you're probably thinking, hold on, I said something about customized cells. Well, yes. What we're going to do right now is just try and get the table up and running with a generic table cell with just the table data as is, with just the character names. And then we'll focus on customizing this cell. So let's now move on to getting the row number in question. So we'll say let row num equal index path dot row, and we'll populate the table cell's text label variable. So we'll say table cell dot text label dot text is equal to list data of row num. And it would be nice to, well, first we'll satisfy the optional issue, so wants a question mark. But it would be nice to add the accessory we talked about before. So we'll say, have a little arrow to indicate, hey, click to see more. So we'll say table cell dot accessory type is equal to dot disclosure indicator. Then we'll return table cell. So now we have enough to run. We just have to connect things up in the storyboard, and then we'll give it a run to check to see if everything's up and running and we can view our table cell properly. Then we can go ahead and create our custom table cell for a custom look and feel. So let's move over to main.storyboard. Click on the table view. And click on the connections inspector. So click on table view, there's data source and delegate. Those two get connected to the yellow circle. Now let's enable that back button. So clicking on the back button, hold down the control key on your keyboard, click, drag to the exit icon. Now you got two segues to choose from, so you have to be very carefully choose the right one. We're going to choose Unwind to Home View Controller because that's the one that exists in our home pages view controller. If we chose the other one, it would just keep reloading itself. Since we're talking about Unwind Segues, let's just look at the back button for our third page. And let's click, control, and drag to its exit icon. And we'll choose Unwind to choose View Controller. So now we got the back button there enabled too, since we're at it. Now we have enough to run. So I'm going to choose an iPhone 8. And I'm going to hit run. There's our loading, there's our begin, and there's our characters. All right, so at this point, we've basically recapped how to build a table, how to get tables up and running, and how to add in images through the image assets file. So now what we want to do is we want to customize our table cell and take this further and add an event handler for each cell. All right, so now that we got the table up and running, our next goal is to get this table cell, the table cells customized to different look and feel. Now, we're going to go with a particular design where we're going to have the logo on the left, have a label up here with the character name, and the website URL right below it in a different color. And we're going to use some preset locations and preset defines just to do that. There are two approaches to doing this. We're going to take the long and hard way just to understand how table cells are created behind the scenes. So we could easily do this by creating a table view cell and in the storyboard connecting things up and then running it as normal, but we're going to take the long way of using the code. And in a future lesson you'll see how we can do this without code in a storyboard. So first thing we need to do is add a new object. So I'm going to add it under classes. So I'm going to right click, new file, iOS Cocoa Touch class. And this will be a subclass of UITableViewCell. I'm going to call it site cell. And give it a home. Alright, so site cell is of type UITableViewCell. A couple of methods are auto-generated. One's called awake from nib, and the other one's called setSelected. Awake from nib is kind of like a viewDidLoad. It's executed much before viewDidLoad, where it I believe is executed closer to the instantiation process of the object in question. setSelect is executed when you want to have something happen upon selecting a table cell. For example, maybe change the text color to red or something like that. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to use neither of these methods. We're going to use a couple of different ones to get us up and running. But to do that, first we have to define the variables we need. So first thing I'm going to do is define a label. So I'll say let primary label equal UI label instantiated. Now, you notice that I didn't use an IB outlet here because I'm taking the long way. If you are going to take the simple way of just creating a table view cell in Storyboard, you would say IB outlet here, and then you'd be done once you added your variables. Let secondary label equal UI label. Then let my image view equal UI image view instantiated as well. So I got my three objects, and what I want to do now is I need to configure my table cell, but I'm going to do it in code to illustrate how you can add objects without a storyboard. That's the whole purpose of it. So this object has a constructor called init and then with style essentially. So I'm going to override that constructor. I'm going to say override init, and you'll see that style and reuse identifier pop up, and that's the one I want. Now it's going to complain. It's going to say, well, hey, you're bringing in this init. We want to make sure that the other init, the generic init, is not executed. So we're going to have to override that too. So I'm going to click on the red dot, say, hey, okay, go ahead, autocomplete, so that at least we have that completed. Now the purpose of this constructor here is to configure our labels and add them to the screen. So we're going to configure our labels. We'll say primary label dot text alignment. We'll make it equal to dot left, so dot left justified. Primary label dot font is equal to, we'll use the system font, so we'll say UI font dot bold system font of size, and hard code it to 30 pixels. We'll set the background color. So I don't have to do this, but I'm doing this in this case to illustrate something. We'll say primary label dot background color. Not something you really care to do a lot of times. We'll set it equal to dot clear. Now the reason I'm doing this is because chances are you're going to expand on your tables. You're going to put like a beautiful background image behind your table, and then you're going to have these customized cells that will have these white boxes around the labels, and so it'll look very strange. And by default the background color of labels are white, so if we change it to clear, then it looks see-through and it looks more crisp. So that's why we're just doing that here. That's the purpose of that line of text of code. So now primary label dot text color, set it to black. And we'll do the same thing for secondary label. So again, text alignment is equal to dot left, dot font is equal to UI font, system font of size. We'll use 12 font. Actually, we'll say bold system font of size for consistency. We'll use a 12 font. So we got our bold system font of size 12. We're going to set the background color to clear. Dot clear. Finally, secondary label dot text color. Just to make it stand out, we'll say dot blue. Alright, so we've configured our primary label and our secondary label. Our image view doesn't need any configuring because it gets configured in self-row at when we choose the image that we need to display. So that's only done there. But there's an error here. It's complaining that we haven't called the super constructor. So let's do that and get that out of the way here. So we'll say super.init but it's got init with style already, so autocomplete that and just push forward the two arguments that are passed in to the method definition above. So we'll pass in style and reuse identifier. Alright, so just pass it through. Now, we have to do is we've created these three objects that are supposed to appear in a table cell, but we're not using a storyboard to do this. So we need to have a way to paste these onto the screen. So we're going to use a line that says content view dot add subview. And you notice that it's passing in a UI view. So all of these UI objects, whether it be labels, text boxes, web views, and so on, are sub-objects of UI view. So I'm going to pass in primary label. I'll do the same, content view dot add subview for secondary label. Content view dot add subview for my image view. Alright, so that's it for the constructor. The constructor's purpose was to configure and put objects on the screen. Now, that would be great on its own, but the problem is that we have one more thing to do. We have to tell it where everything has to go and how big everything is. So x, y, width, and height has to be defined. But we're not going to do that in this method. We're going to use another method instead. So we're going to use a method that is called layout subviews. So do it right below our init. We're going to add a new method. If I type in layout, there's layout subviews. Alright, and so here we'll define the x, y, width, and height. So every object, the label, the text field, the image views, and so on, have x, y, width, and height, and they're easy to configure in the storyboard under the size inspector. But here we need to do the encode, and there's a variable called frame. Frame is of type CGRect, which we talked about in the past already. So we're gonna update the frame variable of all three objects. So starting with primary label, we'll say primary label dot frame equals CGRect of, and I'll take the ints rendition of it. So I'm going to hard code these values. They're already predefined. So we'll say x is 100, y is 100, sorry, y is 5, that is, width 460, height 30. So origin for everything, like I said in the past, is 0, 0 is located in the top left corner. We'll say secondary label dot frame equals CGRect of, and so we'll say again 100, this time 40, width is again 460, height is 20. And then my image view dot frame is equal to CGRect, and again x, y, width, and height are ints, and we'll say at 5, we'll set the size of the icon to 45 by 45. Right, so that's layout subviews. So now between layout subviews and init with style, this is basically the entire class that you need. And between these two, you're able to get your items to display on the screen manually without a storyboard. So now that we've got our site cell up and running, what we want to do is we want to now use that site cell in our table. And to do that, we have to return back to choose site view controller and integrate this object into that method. So I'm going to jump back to choose site view controller. We're going to go to self row at. At self row at, I'm going to comment out that first line of code with table cell. And below it, I'll start a fresh declaration of table cell. So I'm going to say let table cell equal table view dot dq reusable cell identifier. I'm still going to use the same identifier of cell, same text, but I'm going to cast it as site cell. All right, so it's going to cast the table cell as site cell, but if it returns back nil, we have to do something. So we still need a double question mark, and now we're going to instantiate site cell instead of UITableViewCell. So we'll say site cell of, and then use its constructor of style and reuse identifier. Style will be .default. Reuse identifier is cell. So consistent with above. So now we have instantiated the site cell. And if the site cell is leaving the screen, it gets repurposed as a site cell instead of as a generic UITableViewCell. So now let's integrate our items into this screen. So we have here table cell text label. Let's change that to primary label. So say primary label. So table cell.primarylabel.text is equal to list data of row num. Right? We still have row num being our index path.row value. Now let's do the secondary label. So table cell dot secondary label dot text is equal to site data of row num. And then our image view. So we'll say table cell dot myImageView dot image is equal to image data of row num. Now you'll notice I didn't have to instantiate a UI image here. So this is of type UI image. The array actually is an array of UI images. We just see it as avatars or as little images already in the array. So it's already taken care of. It's already instantiated as an image view only because it got converted for us. So now we have enough to run. Let's just see how our table cell looks like. Hit begin. And here's all of our stuff. So monkey, donkey, llama, yoti, yina, walla, hita, and ion. All of our characters are there. All of the corresponding URLs are there. So now it's up to us to get the URLs to display the proper website. So now what we want to do is we need a way to enable an event handler to go to the third page and handle our displaying of that website. First off, the websites are non-secure HTTP. Actually, the website itself is HTTPS, but I'm just going to illustrate non-secure websites just so you have an understanding of being able to open up the security hole that you need. So to do that, you go to info.plist. First of all, just to recap, we have our URLs as HTTP websites. They won't view until we go to info.plist, and we add in a new property to our property list by hitting the plus sign. And you're going to choose app transport security settings. So start typing in app transport. Now when you do that, you get a little arrow. It's important that you hit the arrow and point the arrow down so you can add a sub key to it. So now I can hit the plus sign. If you try hitting the plus sign, you're just going to keep adding options below, but it won't be part of that transport security settings. So I'm going to hit plus. It allows the options. So I have three options here: allow arbitrary loads in WebView, exception domains. Exception domains is probably the right way to do it by specifying, which URLs are allowed. But I'm going to say allow arbitrary loads, just because this is just an exercise on tables and not necessarily web views. So I'm going to change that to yes. All right, so I'll just save that. And now let's jump back to our choose site view controller, and we're going to add a new method here. So I said that there were three methods we needed to really support a table: how many rows there are in the table, how thick is each table, what does each table cell look like. Well, to get event handling up and running, we're going to add another method. This one is what happens when you click on a cell. And we want an event to happen, but it's not your typical IB action. Instead, we're going to say didSelectRow at, and so this method gets executed upon clicking on a table cell. To do that, we want to basically say go to the third page and display a website. But which website to display? So we need to have a way to pass over the website in question. There's a few ways you can do it. You could save it as like a database variable. We're going to take advantage of app delegates. Since we talked about app delegates in the past and how to pass data using an app delegate, we're just going to jump over to the app delegate and create a variable there. And we'll save our URL in the app delegate variable that we're going to create. So I'm going to jump to appdelegate.swift and say var, call it selected URL of type string, make it equal to an empty string. So now you have an empty string here. This string is going to represent the URL that's been selected upon clicking didSelectRow. So now we can jump back to choose-site-view-controller. We can populate the code that we need for here. So to do that, we need to request access to our app delegate. So we'll say let main delegate equal UIApplication.shared.delegate as app delegate. So this requests access to our app delegate. Now we're going to save our URL in our selected URL variable. So say main delegate dot selected URL is equal to site data of index path dot row. So we've saved our URL that we want. Now the next step is we want to go to the third page. So we want to segue to the third page. And to segue to the third page, we need to call that segue. We can do it in code, like I was alluding to earlier. There is a method called performSegue. And it has an argument called withIdentifier. So we'll say withIdentifier. Now you'll be very careful. It's a string argument, and it's got to be spelled exactly the way you typed it out in the storyboard. Let's take a trip back to the storyboard for a moment and look at how we spelled it. So I'm going to go back to main storyboard. Click on the segue over here, this little where my mouse is, kind of covered up because, and so we want this segue, and look at the attributes inspector for that segue. Under identifier, we called it choose segue to view. Safest thing to do, just copy and paste. So Command C to copy, jump back to our choose site view controller, and just put it here under string. So we have choose segue to view, sender nil. Now you have enough to run to see if it'll redirect to the third page. You could run it, it'll probably crash on the third page or do nothing. In fact, let's give it a shot, let's see what happens. But you have enough now to at least redirect to the third page. The reason it may crash is because we haven't configured the WebKit view. Alright, so loading, hit begin, got our characters, I'll just pick YOT, and as expected it's crashing, but it's crashing because it doesn't know what to do with the WebKit view. So we have to fix that. So in fact, just for learning purposes, we can see what the message is. So could not instantiate class called WKWebView because we haven't written the code for that yet. So let's do that now. So we're done with choose site view controller. We don't need to do anything more with it. We're going to focus all of our energy now on view site view controller. And view site view controller is just similar to what we did in the past, where we got a WebKit view to display. So you can see a past video on a detailed explanation of WebKit view. But in order to get a WebKit view up and running, we have to add the WebKit framework to our project. So let's go to our project settings. So here at the top, we click on Swift Tables 2, scroll to the bottom. Under Linked Frameworks and Libraries, we're going to type in WebKit. I'm going to bring in WebKit.framework. So now that we have WebKit.framework, we can switch over to ViewSiteViewController.Swift and start coding up our WebKit view. So now we'll start by importing WebKit. And we'll also bring in its support delegate. So we have class ViewSiteViewController extends UIViewController WK Navigation delegate. Alright, so we can get the page navigation up and running, as well as hiding and unhiding the activity indicator. So now we have two outlets we need for this page. So we'll say IB outlet var WebView extends WK WebView, and IB outlet var activity extends UI activity indicator view exclamation mark. Alright, so now let's focus on getting the web page to appear that in question. We'll do that in view.load. So it's supposed to load the page by default. First thing we need to do is get the URL in question that we need. It's inside app delegate, so we have to request access to it. So we'll say let main delegate equal UI application dot shared dot delegate as app delegate. Then we can go through our steps to getting a WebKit view to display a URL. So first, we've got to create a URL object, passing in our URL as a string. So we'll say let URL address equal URL of, and we want the one with string. There it is. We'll pass in as an argument main delegate dot selected URL. Next step, we need a URL request object. So we'll say let URL equal URL request and pass in the URL object above, so URL address. Now it's going to complain, so let's make it happy by adding in the optional exclamation mark. Now the next step is to tell the web view to go ahead, make it so, and load that URL. So we'll say webview dot load URL. Now we need to do an additional step because we want to have the activity indicator hide and unhide and spin during the load process. So we're going to say webview dot navigation delegate equals self. Alright, so those are the lines of code we need to get the WebKit view to display a website, but we need to bring in the two support methods that will hide and unhide the activity indicator as needed. The first support method we need is to execute upon making our request, so doing that load. So we want the activity indicator to unhide itself and start spinning. So we'll say, so we'll need to bring in the method called didStartProvisional Navigation. And here we will tell the activity indicator to start animating. Oh, of course, I misspelled activity indicator, so apologies. Activity. Would help if I knew how to spell it. So activity, and then we can finish our start animating. And activity dot set hidden, or sorry, is hidden, is equal to false. So it's unhidden. And then did finish. That's the other support method we need. Upon our website finishing loading, we want the activity indicator to stop spinning and go away. So that method is called didFinish. We'll just do the opposite of above. So activity dot stop animating, activity dot is hidden is equal to true. And now we have enough to run, we just have to connect things up and then give it a run. So we'll move back to main.storyboard. Now we'll focus on our third page and click on the yellow circle. Go to our connections inspector. We have activity. Be careful connecting stuff up. Activity, for some reason, can easily get mixed up with WebKit view, and then web view connected to web view. Now go ahead, give it a run. Alright, so now let's begin. We got our table view. I'm going to choose monkey. Goes to our third page. It's spinning, spinning, spinning. And there we go. We have monkey's description. I'll go to Yina. Alright, it's got Yina there. And let's do Hita. Alright. And so you can click on them all, they all work. But in a nutshell, what we focused on today was how to get a customized table up and running. So we got our table up and running. We got a customized table cell with our logo and primary and secondary label. So name and website URL and logo. And we learned how to create an event handler that upon clicking on a cell, have something happen. And then in our cases, go to a third page. So we learned how to create a segue in code and execute it in code. And then we also learned how to pass our URL to a third page using the app delegate. So in a nutshell, we've learned how to master a lot about the table. There's so much more to table views that just can't be covered in a couple of videos. Our next video will focus on taking our table view a step further and retrieving data from a SQLite database and then inserting new data into the SQLite database. So we're going to learn about SQLite and how it affects table views, and also look at the picker view and see how the picker view will act and how similar it is to the table view. But just want to point out that characters are supplied here courtesy of projectmkd.com. So based off of the iPhone and Android game called Monkey Kiss and Donkey 2, which are on the App Store, please take a download of it, enjoy it, have fun with it, and rate it, leave a comment, leave a rating, just enjoy it and share it with your friends to support our work and help us bring more videos to you for you to learn. Until next time, take care and see you then.